Okay. So welcome everyone. Today we are in this webinar about the role of the education system to promote social and sustainable tourism. I'm very happy to be with three lecturers from different countries. So we have, let's start with women. We have Elena MOSHNYAGA from the Russian International Academy for Tourism, Riyadh in Russia. We have Kostas Kakoudakis, who's a lecturer at UCLan, Cyprus. And then we have Carlos Ferreira from Portugal, and he's a lecturer at the University of Coimbra. But I think it's actually better if I let them introduce themselves. So maybe, Elena, you can start introducing yourself.
All right, thank you. I'm happy to greet everyone on this webinar. It's a pleasure for me to be addressing you and to be in the company of lecturers from different universities. I'm actually a lecturer from Russian International Academy for Tourism, and I'm teaching intercultural communication, cross-cultural management, cultural tourism, and different aspects of tourism and tourist market. And I'm teaching to master's degree students, and I'm actually responsible for the students in the postgraduate level. I'm representing Russian International Academy of Tourism, and this is one of the public tourism universities. According to the Federal Agency for Tourism in Russia, there are 292 institutions, universities, academies, institutes dealing with tourism studies and hospitality studies, and 58 out of them are private, 234 are public. So we are one of the private universities. There are around 1,500 students, undergraduate, graduate, and postgraduate, taking different majors and minors in tourism, tourism management, hospitality management, personnel management, state and municipal government, design of architectural environment, and some other majors. So I guess this is the general thing about the Russian International Academy for Tourism. I guess my time is up for that. Thank you. We would continue. Thank you.
Thank you. Kostas, maybe?
Yes, actually, thank you very much as well for the invitation to this really interesting webinar. Okay, you mentioned already that I'm a lecturer in tourism and hospitality management at UCLan, Cyprus. UCLan is actually, UCLan Cyprus is the campus of the University of Lancashire in Cyprus. It's the only British university in Cyprus. And actually, we are offering dual degrees recognized and by the UK and Cyprus, the Cyprus Ministry of Education. Apart from my role as a lecturer in tourism and hospitality, my interests are related to what to the work of the International Social Tourism Organization. Most of my research revolves around social tourism, and other of my interests have to do with sustainable development, seasonality, very relevant, and lately also the working conditions in the hospitality and tourism industry. That's all from me.
Thank you, Kostas.
You're welcome.
Carlos?
Yes, hello, everyone. First of all, I would like to, on behalf of my university, the University of Coimbra, to congratulate ISTO for this initiative, this e-week of fair and sustainable tourism for all, which I think it's of utmost value for all of us, for those who are participating. Marina already told you that I'm an assistant professor at the University of Coimbra, more precisely at the Department of Geography and Tourism. I also would like to congratulate, because when we look at this panel, we do a very wide geographical scope. So if you have a map of the big Europe, you will see people coming from all around the edges. Russia, Cyprus, Portugal, and then Brussels, of course. So this is and also the participants, which I know they came from all around the world, and this is something that we would be happy to. The purpose of being here, and I think the main point, is that I've been working on what I can call a big realm of social and other related topics, social tourism. I've been working a long time ago on senior tourism, senior tourism, accessible and inclusive tourism, which is also an area which I'm dedicating part of my research and teaching time. But because I am, my background is geography, I'm very interested in all the tourism geographies approaches. So I have two sides of my research and my teaching activities, the one on social tourism and another one which is basically on tourism geographies. That's all.
Thank you very much to the three of you. I just wanted to give a bit more explanation about how this webinar is going to run. So we wanted to really present it more as a roundtable. So we want to have a discussion. We want to talk with attendees. So please don't hesitate. Of course, I've prepared a few questions, but please don't hesitate to ask questions through the chat. You can also raise your hand if you want virtually. If you want to speak with the microphone, I can give you access to the microphone, and then you can just ask your questions, or explain something, having some remarks, some comments. So feel free to ask questions anytime during the presentations, during the speeches. So I think that we can start with the biggest part of this webinar, because it's the main theme, the general theme. So the question to the three speakers is, how can the education system promote sustainable and social tourism? And I think we can start with Carlos. I know he has a few slides he wants to share with you as well.
Okay, thank you, Martin. In fact, just a very few amount of slides, because I don't want this webinar to be somehow boring or similar to as a lecture. So my 3 or 4 slides are basically as a kind of a framework for the discussion that will follow. It's somehow my personal view, not a full frame, of course, just a few hints and a few highlights, and I would like to share it with you. Let's, do you have it now on your screen? Good.
Yes.
So this is, in fact, a kind of, well, if this was to be a kind of a position paper, this was it look like? So I have some very kind of fact-checking ideas to promote discussion and to also to bring my colleagues, my panel colleagues, to build upon these ideas. First of all, there are a couple of studies have done in the recent years, in the last few years, and some of them, they point to a very substantial increase in the number of papers with the broad topic of sustainability, or with different, some kind of different designations: tourism sustainability, ecotourism, green tourism, biotourism, blue tourism. So the first fact is that we have witnessed it since, I would guess, the last 30 years at least, a substantial increase in the number of research involving sustainability in the tourism activity. So this is one of the facts I would like to give to you. The second one is, let me, oh, wait, I need to, okay, good, sorry. The second one is that we do have somehow a network, different networks of organizations which are involved in promoting research and communication on topics that we are discussing here today. So the one is on sustainable tourism, and for that we have the BEST-N, the Building Excellence in Sustainable Tourism Education Network, and I'm not going through the main objectives. Then we have TEFI, the Tourism Education Futures Initiative, which also carry out very interesting approach and very interesting initiatives on matching tourism and education. And we also have, of course, the European Network of Accessible Tourism, and finally, at last, we have ISTO, which is, we can see it today, also carries a very interesting work on all the issues that concern social tourism in a very wide perspective as well. So if we are to look at the research and political organizations which have these topics in their own agenda, we can look that there are several of these organizations tackling this topic. But then if we go for some of the results of research which have done previously by famous and not so much famous authors, I would like to highlight that there is a mismatch between what I have said before and what is the expression of this focus on sustainable tourism, on social tourism in the educational agenda, from an educational point of view. If we look at one of the research done by Scott McCabe, Lynn Minert, and Hanya Dickman, they have said, well, quite a long time, 8 years ago, they have witnessed, they have experienced from their research a lack of academic focus on social tourism in overall wide European university curricula. Then we have another paper which also addressed this topic of more into the accessible tourism approach, and the authors, Sotirolo, which is in fact from Cyprus, and two other authors from Portugal, they have seen and they have expressed that the results have demonstrated that in tourism studies, disability is not well enough discussed. So we see from, we are bringing up and we are adding evidence from researchers that this, although we have a very broad scientific production, and although we have organizations dedicated to bring these topics to the agenda, this has not come, this has not yet integrated the educational sector. Another statement from an author, Eugenia Deville, she said that tourism can be and should be an enabler to attitudinal and behavioral change towards accessibility tourism, accessible tourism, which was the basic and the main topic of her research. And finally, I will go back and look at the sustainability itself, which somehow it has a longer history, and the background is longer than social tourism. And even that, from another research done by Boyle, Wilson, and Dimmock, they have presented that the results reveal that sustainability, although there, is somehow elusive, and at least at the level of the degree and subject names and descriptions. So this is something that we need to reflect on, because the production is there, the political awareness is there, but if we look at these evidences from different papers, different authors, different geographical scopes, I think there is quite a long walk, quite a long way to put these two topics, social tourism and sustainability in tourism, in the educational agenda. So these are, no, I would leave that. So I would then suggest and urge my colleagues to build upon these facts that I bring for this discussion first. Thank you.
Elena, maybe you want to say something?
Yes, the idea of social tourism is quite close to the senior generation in Russia, because we used to have a tradition of social tourism in the Soviet Union. Sustainability probably is the subject that we commonly use nowadays, starting with 1989, with the concept of sustainability. But we at Riyadh think that it's very important for us to get the feedback from our students, specifically graduate and postgraduate students who have a specific understanding, might have a specific understanding and specific background knowledge from their parents, grandparents, from families about social tourism, but might have a controversial understanding of sustainability. So specifically for this e-week on fair and sustainable tourism for all, at RIAT there was a research done with students from RIAT and also Moscow State University and the Economic University, roughly 80 respondents. And the basic questions that were set, just getting a feedback and also getting the ideas how to alter, change, add, modify our programs, our curricula, and maybe the contents of certain subjects. So actually, roughly, I would go through those 10 questions that were the basis of that research. So the first one was, are you familiar with the concept of global sustainable development? And the options were, yes, I'm sure I understand it correctly. No, I have no idea what it means. Yes, but I'm not sure and I understand it correctly. And we can see that 66% say that they understand it correctly. Just 1% said no, and 33% just hesitated and said that they are not exactly sure. The second question set was, does or did your educational program include any academic disciplines focusing on the issues of global sustainable development? And again, 35% said yes, we had one such discipline. 34% said yes, we have many or a few such disciplines. And 31% said no, we don't have anything like this, and we never discussed that with our professors. So actually equal 3 portions show that this is really controversial and we don't have a common basis in terms of sustainability training and educational contents. The third question was, do you know the 7 Sustainable Development Goals? Again, the differences are quite great. Like 21% said, yes, I know them all. 41, yes, I heard about them. And 38, no, I don't. The fourth question, do you think tourism is one of the key tools for achieving the Sustainable Development Goals? This is also surprising that just 80% said, yes, I think so. 19, yes, but the role of tourism is insufficient. And even we had 1% of those students who said, no, tourism doesn't take part in achieving the goals, doesn't play any active role in that. The next question, the fifth question was, do you think there is social tourism in the Russian Federation? This was very interesting because for 70 years, all people knew what they mean by social tourism and took the advantage of that, of traveling free of charge, the costs covered by trade unions, or 80% or 50% of the cost. But for the youngers, this is something different, and 12% answered yes, it is quite developed. 74% said yes, but it is poorly developed. And 14% said no, there is no tourism in the country subsidized from the state budget or from any social funds. The next question was, what do you think, what categories of citizens should the state support and pay for their leisure, recreation, educational travel? And the differences are again amazing. 21% said children and young people, 49 disabled people of any age, and 30% elderly people irrespective of their incomes. So actually I should do like this probably. So the next question was, do you think the employers should pay for leisure, recreation, educational travel of their staff members? Consider the perspective was consider this question from the position of tourism business. The differences were like this: yes for all and in full 6%, yes for all but partially 19%, yes partially for all but in different ratio depending on the experience and length of work in the organization 35%, no they should not, they pay salaries and wages to their staff members 9%, yes for all on the condition it is encouraged by the state, by the government 31%. The next question was, do you think in the condition of COVID-19 pandemic crisis and post-crisis, the role of social tourism subsidized by the state will increase? And we have this diversity of answers. 33% yes it will. It is an important instrument of increasing tourist flows, and this would help all the market players, all the market participants. 8% yes, but it will affect sanatoriums only. So actually sanatoriums, rest houses, resort clusters is a specific traditional thing for Russia in the Caucasus, in the Crimea, and the Black Sea. So Russians know what they mean by sanatoriums. That is a specific segment of holiday making with medical treatment. So 8% said yes, but it will affect sanatoriums only. Then 2% said yes, but only tour operators will need it. 37% said no, because the state has not developed the instruments for subsidizing tourism, social tourism. And finally, 20% said no, it will remain at the same level, so nothing will change. And the final questions were, do you think educational programs should involve specific academic disciplines covering the issues of social and responsible tourism if the program itself is focused on management of tourism or on management of hospitality? The answers were like this. 59% said yes, there should be such academic disciplines. 40% said no, there should not be specific academic disciplines. These issues should be discussed within general subjects. And 1% said no, there's no need to specifically discuss these issues at all. And finally, do you think the educational program should involve specific academic disciplines covering the issues of sustainable development? Similarly to the previous question, the answers were 64% said yes, there should be such academic disciplines. 35% said no, there should not be specific disciplines. These issues should be discussed within general subjects. And finally, 1% said no, there is no need to specifically discuss these issues. Actually, this is the discussion that probably needs some detailed analysis and maybe some the discussion and the interviews with the students who gave controversial answers. But still, this is already something of the feedback we get from students, and this is very important for us. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Elena, for those numbers. Actually, I find them quite encouraging. I think maybe Kostas wants to say something about what Carlos and Elena have said already.
Yes, thanks, Marin. Actually, very interesting slides and information by Carlos and Marin. I will keep and I will try to integrate my answer to one of the points that both of them raised. First of all, Carlos said at some point, and I completely agree, that there is political awareness, there is an increasing popularity of research that is related to sustainability in general and to sustainable tourism specific. However, there is not, all this, they have not been well integrated into the formal educational system. The reality is like that, as Carlos mentioned. And as he also highlighted, unfortunately, we have a long way to go in general in relation to this. Also something in all those interesting data from Elena, I kept one point about the initial question of their research about asking people if they understand it and if they are aware about the concept of sustainability. If I remember well, I think the majority, something like 66%, said that they are aware of and they understand what it means sustainability. And there is another question. If people in general, the majority of people are aware of sustainability as a holistic concept that is much more than, concerns much more than the environment, which is the popular aspect of sustainability, especially lately. Yes, so I'm not sure if the majority of people, they really understand this holistic aspect, or if they think that sustainability is mainly something that concerns the environment. This doesn't apply only to the geographical setting of Russia, but to any country. In relation to this and to bring all of this together in your initial question, I think that first of all, before attempting to answer the question how the educational system can promote concepts such as sustainability and social tourism, we need to consider that the educational system is not independent on or isolated from the wider social system. So first of all, actually is a component of the wider social system. So first of all, we need to see what happens in this wider social system. This question has to do with things like the prevailing ideas in the wider social system, the prevailing values in our wider social systems, the prevailing actually attitudes, practices, and behaviors. And when we do this, and as observers, and no matter the geographical settings where we live in, we can see that in general, in the wider social system, there's not any prioritization or focus or, let's say, a significant interest in issues and concepts like sustainability or social tourism. The wider social system, if we try to get deeper into this, we'll see that, okay, it comprises of several different institutions, groups of people, and individuals like every one of us. So we need to start by taking all these different components separately to see what are we doing exactly? Do we live in general? So first of all, we need to question ourselves. Do we live lives that they are sustainable in general? And do we follow behaviors and practices that they are sustainable? So the first question has to do with all of us, is related to every one of us as individuals. Then it is related to the groups where we belong. And then it is related to the institutions and the wider society. Okay, so when we try to answer these questions, we can see that there is not really an interest out there and the focus of the wider social system on issues related to sustainability, and therefore in related concepts such as social tourism. Of course, we need to acknowledge and to be a bit more optimistic that there is some increasing awareness and some interest in general about sustainability. Actually, if you probably remember that before the COVID-19 crisis, okay, perhaps the most popular debate around the world was the debate on the environment and the climate change, especially with these movements that started with Greta, and they took massive, actually, popularity all over the world. So there was an increasing sensitivity before the COVID-19 crisis, mainly because of this initiative of Greta Thunberg, and this actually spread all over the world, which is positive, of course. So there was this concern and focus at that time. However, there was like a one-dimensional actually focus of the wider society on sustainability, mainly with the dimension that has to do with the environment. Especially the social aspect of sustainability is something that is largely ignored in general, I think, and in research and in our daily lives and in how institutions operate anywhere in the world. So I made all this introduction to conclude actually that in something that Carlos mentioned at the beginning, that of course we have a long way to go in general. Because how are we supposed to promote sustainability and social tourism when we as individuals, okay, if we want to specify it, we can specify it from a Western context or a white, more privileged background that we all have, or most of us have, especially in academia. Either doesn't matter if we come from a middle class or lower middle class family or whatever, but we have different privileges definitely than the majority of the world population. So we need to consider first of all our own behavior, everyday practices in relation to every aspect of life, and then to see how from there we can get to following sustainable practices in tourism and to have some increasing interest in social tourism. At the moment, unfortunately, these aspects, they have a completely different directions. They belong to two completely different directions. So I find it very difficult, actually, the educational system to be in a position at the moment to promote significantly concepts like sustainability and social tourism. In relation to this also, okay, the educational system as a part of this wider social system has taken also a completely different direction. Actually, today we are talking about in general, of course, there are many exceptions and we have different educational systems. We are talking about the corporate university, which actually follows the prevailing ideas, values of the wider social system. And to simplify the discussion, because it is very complex, this means that the corporate university focuses mainly on profit, ideally over profit, and rankings and all these things that will increase the reputation of an institution. They will bring more money, either related to research or more students, and as a result, more fees. So the direction of the contemporary university is business-oriented. And because of this direction, it's again very difficult to prioritize concepts like sustainability in general, sustainable tourism, and social tourism as a part of this. If we go to the industry, the tourism industry, for example, it is the question, okay, I'm not talking too much about the environment because most of us and our audience, they are aware about the environment and the exploitation of the environment from many businesses, including tourism businesses. I will focus on another aspect, on the aspect of the exploitation of human beings and the exploitation of human labor from a large majority of tourism and tourism-related companies around the world. So there is another question. Actually, one question brings another, and we come up into multiple questions and we make this complex, but it is a complex reality. In relation to this, for example, how we can talk about sustainable tourism when, let's say, the working conditions in the industry to a large extent are not sustainable at all. We have the majority of workers in the industry to be extremely low paid. In some countries, actually, amongst all the professions, even in the United States of America, according at least to data that I was looking until a few months ago, one of the worst paid occupations was actually had to do with hotel workers, for example. Similar data we can find in different countries. So how can we talk about sustainable tourism and promote it in general when the industry itself is completely unsustainable, the society itself is completely unsustainable, and we, all of us as different individuals, we follow completely unsustainable practices. So the answer, I don't have a specific answer, but the answer actually is what Carlos said in the beginning, but we have a long way to go actually, and the educational system by itself, it cannot do much. I will give you an example from our university, an example that actually reflects in the British educational system in general, because we have exactly the same curriculum, that we have only one specialized module in our, for example, bachelor's degree that focuses on sustainable development and sustainable tourism. Of course, in many other different lectures that we all deliver in different modules, we'll add one specific lecture about tourism or sustainable tourism. So we try to integrate it a bit more. Personally, I'm always trying to integrate a little bit of social tourism somewhere because it's my expertise and my main recent interest. But in general, there is nothing more than that in our educational system. So given that everything affects everything, everything, we are actually like a chain that, okay, our educational system belongs to the society, as we said. We are a chain that every individual behavior, we have seen that with the COVID pandemic, like things that we cannot even conceive in our minds, like from one individual behavior, we can have a mass crisis. We've had many other examples in the past in relation not only to similar diseases, but with other things like the recent financial crisis of 2009. So, not to take more of your time, I don't want to be pessimistic. I'm trying to be objective or realist as much as I can. That my answer to this question is that unless we see any significant change in the wider social system and our individual behaviors, there's no way that the educational system can do anything about really promoting important concepts like sustainability, sustainable tourism, and social tourism.
Thank you, Kostas, for this realistic point of view. We've had actually two comments from the same person, from Hannah from Poland. She's also a researcher and she's part of the alliance of ISTO actually. So I'm just going to read the comments because I think it's very interesting. She says, I think that tourism education based on sustainability goals is crucial to teach young people, students who decided to work in tourism sector, responsibility and respect toward members of society and environment in the same time. Then she says, our tourism and recreation studies offer several courses devoted to the role of a biosphere in tourism, sustainability in tourism, including the role of local communities in the creation of local tourism products, or accessibility of tourism for different social groups, such as elderly, disabled people. It is necessary to show that tourism should evaluate towards more sustainable forms and at the same time should be more accessible for all. I think that this is really what, I think that we all agree on what she's just said, and I know that Elena has shown some data about sustainable goals, so it's kind of, she's talking about sustainability goals. I'm guessing she's talking about the SDGs in general.
Can I comment in the first part, if I have only half a second on the first part of the, I don't remember the name of the person that asked this question.
Honestly, don't ask me to pronounce her last name.
Okay. Anyway, in relation to the first point of the comment that what education should do, which is valid and we all agree, something that we need also to consider is that, especially today, education to a substantial extent takes part out of the formal education. Okay, we can say that in the past maybe it was like that. Today it's even more because of all this technological actually revolution that we have so much massive information from everywhere. For example, I'm not sure if what we teach in the class has more power than, let's say, a travel vlog video on YouTube. I'm talking about a student. I have a question about this. So we need also to consider that, especially because education takes to the considerable degree happens outside of the university, how, and this is linked to the second part of our discussion, how can be linked to the formal educational system in order to hopefully to have better results in general in relation to education and specifically to topics like sustainability, tourism, etc.
Carlos wants to say something.
Yes, it was very interesting, all these different approaches, both from Elena and Kostas. And if I was trying to somehow wrap up some of these ideas, I would like to put it this way. Of course, there is evidence that the research has moved forward in all these topics, more, of course, on sustainability, not so much yet on social tourism. Somehow governance coming from non-profit agencies or other kinds of organizations, they are becoming aware of those issues. Of course, more on sustainability, not so much on social tourism. Bringing some of the conclusions that Elena has shown us, and bringing also my own personal perspective from my students, is that they are somehow aware and they are curious about some of these topics, more on sustainability, not so much, but becoming more important every year. And I've been witnessing this, the way they are interested in developing topics on social related tourism. And it's funny because I do teach several courses, different topics, tourism planning, tourism management, and others. And from time to time, when they have more practical assignments, they often pick topics that are related with accessible tourism, tourism for all, inclusive or inclusion in tourism. So they are willing to do more on this. The problem is that so far, and as far as I can use this very difficult wrap up worldwide, but there are some evidences that social tourism, for example, is not a topic which is specifically addressed in one course. Social tourism comes within the more general other topics like planning, like marketing, like whatever different topics. And that is one of the issues, is somehow universities and other educational institutions have been able to bring within to the structure of their curricula, both in bachelor's degree or in master's degree, some of these topics, but they often appear, as Kostas was saying, as modules, as a kind of a, let's go and talk a little bit about this, rather than having a coherent and comprehensive approach on some of these topics. Maybe sustainability has it. In our master's degree, for example, we do have a course which is specifically targeted at the sustainable tourism issues. We don't have yet, not even in the graduation or in the bachelor's degree, we don't have yet something similar to social tourism. We hopefully will have it next year, because my last remark is that educational organizations are often heavy structures, and the curriculums they tend to change not that often. they tend to crystallize, and the changes are very smooth slides and take time. So there is a kind of a gap. There is a hiatus between what the social challenges, nowadays social challenges, are presenting us, issues such as social tourism, sustainability, or safety and security due to COVID and not so much on COVID issues. And maybe we have to keep in mind that those organizations are somehow, they do tend to incorporate those societal issues, but in a very slow pace. And our role is to try to increase and speed up that pace. So that's one of the key ideas I would like to leave for the audience. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Carlos. We actually have a question from Benjamin Carre. He says, when I started working in tourism 30 years ago, tourism students were learning a lot about businesses, but little about sustainability. Now the balance has completely tipped, and many graduates are passionate about sustainability, but have little practical understanding of how to monetize their ideas. So the question is, how can tourism educators achieve a better balance? I don't know who wants to answer this. Elena, maybe? You're on mute, so you need to reactivate your microphone. Yes.
Yeah. Actually, I'm not prepared to speak about monetizing. It's a controversial thing, but I would agree with all of you speaking about the gap, the discrepancies, the differences. Actually, the question is, should tourism education take a lead or lag behind? So actually, do we follow and research what's going on in the community, in the country, in other countries, in terms of sustainability, or should we take the lead and set the standards and teach future professionals how to make the reality sustainable? Because if we speak about Russia, just I would say students unfortunately see double standards. We try to teach them environmental sustainability, social sustainability, economic sustainability, not exactly within a specific course, but it is dispersed in different subjects, and also professors who are specializing in that may set up the theme of their term paper like this, or even graduation paper like this on sustainable development of some region. But when the students start doing research, they see really these controversies and double standards, that what is seen as the goal, it is not translated into life in specific areas, because Russia is so much spread out, with 85 subjects of the federation having different laws regulating tourism. So there's so many barriers and so many obstacles to translate the sustainability principles into life. This is one thing. The other thing is that senior generations of Russia, even to postgraduate students, sustainable and social tourism, if we take that as parallel things or one part of the other, they see that as something that we have already had in the past. It was our tradition, and tourism was not seen as business, as a economic segment or sector of industry. It was conceptualized as a healthy way of life, sports, physical culture, local law studies, patriotism, and all of the kind, but not as business. And so it seemed that in the past, both social tourism and sustainable tourism were more logical, were just part of the social system. And nowadays, we told them to look at tourism as business, and they ceased to realize that tourism could be the instrument, the tool of sustainability, and could be social. So this is another controversy that we have in Russia. So it seems again that this is a groundbreaking approach to tackling tourism. So different generations have different experience, different expectations, and they see it differently. And this is another controversy that we have in the education system. So the question still maybe to the professors here with us, do you think education should take the lead, setting the standards or collecting best practices, or should we follow what is being done in tourism business and just stick our educational programs to what is being done? Do you think?
I don't know if Carlos or Kostas want to add something.
Actually, I would like to add something, and also to the initial question of Benjamin, if I understood it well. Actually, he asked that, okay, especially today, there is an increasing interest about sustainability, the theoretical aspect of sustainability within universities, but we lag behind in relation to the practice of sustainability, if I understood it well, and how we can balance this. A similar question answer to what I said before in relation to the other topic. It's very difficult to balance it. Why? Because, okay, the theoretical, okay, definitely there is this increasing interest, and as Carlos mentioned before, also I see in my students an increasing interest in choosing topics related to sustainability, sustainable tourism, or niche forms of tourism, things like that. However, when the students graduate and get into the real world, they see that largely the tourism and hospitality industries are to a large extent not sustainable. So it's very difficult to balance this. And there, I will add, in relation to the question of Elena, the role of the government. I don't say this, don't take me wrong, to politicize the discussion in any way. The role of the government actually to implement specific strategies and measures that, in relation to many different aspects, that they are actually reinforcing and promoting the practical aspect of sustainability in general and specifically within the industry. And this has to do with, and ideally, quite strict actually regulations in relation to the environmental sustainability and the social and economic. We talked before about the salaries of employees, the really human working conditions in many countries around the world. So all these topics, actually, they cannot be resolved in an abstract way. We need the intervention of governments around the world actually to implement specific regulations and policies that the businesses and the industry should follow in order actually to try to balance what happens, the theory of sustainability in the university with the real world and the practice of sustainability for our current students who in the future will be actually workers, employees, managers, and stakeholders of the industry. So one last thing in relation to what we can do as tutors, educators, or teachers is that I'm afraid that we cannot do anything because, again, we are a part of institutions which are part of a wider system that has a specific direction. And we don't have the power, actually. I believe, unfortunately, we don't have any power to take any lead, not only in relation to social tourism and the promotion or sustainable tourism. We don't have the power to take any lead, actually. This is my opinion. Again, maybe pessimistic at the end, but
maybe, yes, maybe I can add just another piece of information, another idea, and that might link with Benjamin's questions, because there is another key actor, a key player in all these systems which have not yet been addressed, which is tourism companies. And so the tourism companies are key to bring forward these issues, even in the educational system. When tourism companies are fully aware of the potential that those approaches, sustainable tourism approach and social tourism approach as well, as long as they are aware of it, maybe the educational system will follow, because they have this kind of well, an obligation, a need to answer the needs of the market. So, and also students will be more and more interested in having these different approaches, sustainable and social tourism approaches in their curricula, when they know, or whenever they know that those potential employers will be looking for that skills in the curricula of the students. So that's it.
All right, thank you. We have another question from Charles-Étienne Bélanger, ISTO director. So he says, the concept of social tourism is not always well understood, especially in the English-speaking countries. Do you think that today it is better recognized at the academic level, or do you think we should use another terminology to increase a better knowledge of this concept of social tourism?
Like subsidized tourism, yes? Just to transfer it to some specific term?
Difficult question, actually, and this is a debate that is going a long time about if, I remember since I was a research student in England 23 years ago, this problematic term, social problematic, actually, here's another question. I'm not sure if the term social is problematic, or in this neoliberal era that we live in, until now, actually, we have this neoliberal ideology that prevails, at least in the most significant economies around the world. It's because in this kind of, again, systems, the word social is seen as problematic, and it has connotations with something related to communism and things like that. Definitely, there is not clarity and much awareness about what it is, and we need to try a lot to increase this awareness. But although, to be honest, until a few years ago, I was thinking that the term social maybe is problematic. Now I have also a question about this. I'm not sure if it's problematic or if it is just fine, and we need to change many other things in relation to the way we are thinking. I hope that due to the COVID crisis, a completely different topic but related, we have seen, because we have seen an increasing role of governments around the world. Again, don't take this from a political point of view. In this increasing role of governments in intervention and financial support towards companies, individuals, and everyone, maybe it's the ideal time for concepts like social tourism, because they are actually based on funding mainly from governments and other institutions, but mainly from governments, to change the public perception about social tourism in general. That at the end of the day, it's not a bad thing to have something that has this name social. It doesn't mean anything bad. So, and in relation to Elena's suggestion, okay, I don't have any alternative term, to be honest, not so far.
Carlos?
It also depends on the traditions. Like I have already mentioned, the idea that if you say to an average Russian social tourism, he would immediately connect it with the idea of trade unions tourism, so subsidized by trade unions at the organization where you work. And the average the trade unions would cover could be 100% if you work there all your life long, you built up a career, you made efforts to contribute to your organization, you are a veteran, and you get 100% coverage of your holidays, tour, medical treatment, so within trade unions. So actually, for Russia, this is a huge tradition in the great correspondence to this Soviet period trade unions tourism. As for subsidized tourism, I guess it's closely connected to the idea of social. So it's again, Russians would associate it with a low cost, a budget type, and basically covered by someone else, the employer, the government, the trade unions, any funds, if you're a member of any fund like veteran or a particular veteran of some kind of war, then you are sure to get the coverage of your not only travel but also medical treatment. Because again, the third thing, so the first one is trade unions, the second one that someone would pay, so subsidized, and the third thing that it is connected with this specific type of holidays and tourism, which is medical treatment, sanatorium. Sometimes we joke and say spa, but of course it's not. It's the Soviet type of spa, resort on mineral waters and natural resources, warm climate, so summer holiday making basically, and to those clusters which are known to every Russian, like Sochi and other Caucasus mineral waters. So these are some kind of stereotypic association with this huge contribution of the Soviet Union generally to the traveling, health, and caring socially about the majority of people. But we realized the Soviet Union were people which were actually of the same level in terms of earnings, incomes, and so on. So this is a Russian vision of what social tourism might be. So probably it's, of course, it's not the same in all the countries. So the question from Charles was absolutely to the point. So probably all countries and educational systems realize, understand by social tourism different things. This is, I think this is true.
Okay.
Thank you.
I just want to say to Charlotte and Bélanger that I regret to say that the answer is quite difficult, and maybe there is no answer for this webinar, of course. This issue of terminologies it looks to me like a never-ending story, like a never-ending discussion, and we will never come to terms with it because there is some quite evident socio-political bias when we are looking and using the word social tourism. Of course, this is not a kind of a solution, but it helps when you create a larger umbrella. When you create a larger umbrella, able to bring in different terminologies and having more or less the same rationale, the same concept, that will be helpful. And of course, these large umbrellas are also a matter of discussion. And if we talk about tourism for all, or we talk about inclusive tourism, it may help a little bit. But I have this very firm idea that even those wider range terminologies will be some obvious motive of discussion, at least scientifically. If not politically, at least scientifically.
Thank you, Carlos, for this. We have another comment from Tatiana Yefremtseva. Sorry for the pronunciation again. She says, I think we should try to find some ways to unite the efforts of different universities and researchers around the world in attempt to promote sustainability and sustainable tourism as well. Educational institutions can share good practices, organizing special platforms on national and international levels. The graduates should contribute to the development of sustainable tourism via DMOs in destinations. I don't know if someone wants to say something about this comment.
We should definitely do something like that. I don't have anything else to comment, but we should. Yeah.
Yes, I think that you know, international organizations such as ISTO can actually help as well. And I mean, this is exactly what we're doing right now. We're trying to discuss, we're trying to find solutions, we're trying to spread the word that we are in need of sustainable tourism. And actually, as you know, we haven't really been talking in this webinar about the COVID crisis. Well, Elena has a little bit, but you know that a lot of people in general have been reflecting a lot about life, about our society in general, and a lot of people are talking about sustainability, saying that we need more sustainability. So my question now to you is, do you think that maybe the society will be maybe more ready now after the crisis to deal with sustainable and social tourism? Carlos, we cannot hear you.
Sorry, it's another difficult question, but I think we are not yet prepared to look into the near future, look into what this pandemic will bring in all levels of our society, in all levels of our daily lives. One thing I am quite sure of, not only on an individual, but also on an organizational level, including educational institutions, including governments, including agencies, there will be some topics that will be more often present in the agenda, in the discussions. One of them, of course, will be because of the facts, because of the nature of the pandemic itself and the crisis, is issues on safety and security. Definitely, they will bring forward in the aftermath of this crisis. Also for the tourism activity, as we are now seeing everywhere around the world. Not only from airline travelers, airline companies, but also accommodation and all kinds of tourism-related services. I guess a dream I have is that also the topic of not a topic, but the approach on ethics and inclusion will be also an issue that will be further discussed and addressed by politicians, and not only them, in the aftermath of this crisis. We have been seeing how this crisis have affected differently different target groups. Seniors, for example, are one of the most repressed, if I can say that, groups, age groups, because of this crisis, but also some others, and I guess they will need to be a proper look from authorities, from governments, from the civil society, and bring these topics on ethics and inclusion from different. When I talk about inclusion, of course, I'm having the reverse of the coin, which is exclusion from, and they are prone to be excluded from different everyday life activities. Mobility, for example, and tourism is one of them. So I guess we all need, as individuals, as researchers, as politicians, we all need to have this in mind and discuss more and do more in the near future.
Thank you, Carlos. We have another question from Benjamin Carey for Elena, actually. So he says, many people are talking about domestic tourism as the first step to tourism recovery. At least 80% of tourism in Russia is domestic, and it became a patriotic duty to visit Crimea following its annexation. What can other countries learn from Russia about the promotion of domestic tourism as we emerge from the COVID-19 crisis? Before you answer, Elena, I just wanted to tell Benjamin and the other attendees that we have a webinar on domestic tourism following this one. So it will start in 45 minutes, actually. So if you have any interest, for domestic tourism, don't miss it. It is still, you can still register for it. So now I will let Elena answer this question.
So it's another controversial subject because as Marine showed, the domestic tourism as patriotic, probably this is again another answer to the question about what was the reason of 80% of domestic tourism in Russia, and why it was 100% when we were beyond the boundaries closed in the Soviet Union. So I would say in the Soviet Union, the tourism was ideologically based. It was not business, it was ideology that tourism develops patriotism, tourism develops physical abilities, it develops romanticism, love for nature, which is really associated with the country, with the love for country. So it was not formal education, but tourism was a form of education. Excuse me for playing with the words, but actually it was like that. And we never looked at tourism as business. So it's a normal human activity, it's a value, it develops good features of an average citizen of the country. And so that was the answer why we had 100% of domestic tourism. Later on, when tourism became business and market economy, that started in the Soviet Union. Actually, it was Russia already, in 1990s, actually. And at that time, traveling abroad was a matter of whether you can afford it. So traveling within Russia seemed cheaper, easier, and so the majority of people used to stick to the same tradition of traveling domestically. Another thing, Marine and gentlemen, you can imagine Russians have a big problem with foreign languages knowledge. And if you do not know the language and you travel to other countries, it seems to be a disability. So you're a disabled person if you cannot speak any language but Russian. So there are many reasons why 80% is domestic tourism. It's not only patriotism, it's not only affordability, it's not only Soviet tradition. Our country is huge, gigantic, with 190 different ethnic groups, nationalities living together with their customs, traditions, ways of life, and folklore, and whatever. So you'd better stick to your domestic tourism because you don't have a problem with the language, you don't have a problem with crossing the border, having a foreign passport, you don't have the problem with affordability and accessibility. So both of this. So we would say that the majority of people still continue doing domestic tourism, but at the same time, now when we have a different reality, people, those who got accustomed to traveling abroad, and it's already for 20 years and I guess 30 years that people used to take international tours and go into Europe and to Asia and to the Pacific and to Americas. And nowadays they have again to switch their mentality back. And those people who used to traveling abroad actually have a deferred demand, postponed demand. They say, we would wait until the borders are open, it's safe, no fear of travel, rather than traveling domestically. So I guess I agree with Carlos that it's too early to make conclusions and to foresee how it would go on in a year or 2 years. But actually, I think domestic travel is also a controversial thing. I would personally guess that those who were used to traveling to overseas destinations would wait, and those who are used to traveling domestically would continue doing that with greater pleasure. you know, we have a different alternative. We have dacha recreation. Dacha is a small countryside cottage, and people would go there. So the majority take their holidays going to their dacha. So Russia is not a typical example, I would say, in terms of domestic tourism. So I would stop here because I can talk for a long time about domestic tourism. Maybe a gentleman would say something. Marine, would you probably comment or something? Thank you.
Thank you, Elena. I don't know if Kostas or Carlos want to say something. I just want to tell attendees that we have more or less 10 minutes left for this webinar, then we'll have to close it. So if you have any question, it is now that you must ask them. Carlos, Kostas, do you want to add something?
We don't have much time. One little thing to add is that, especially in the post-COVID era now, for example, the topic of domestic tourism becomes popular in most countries. Actually, here in Cyprus, in Greece, at least from what I know, it has been very rapidly integrated in the tourism strategy that we need to focus as well, not only on domestic tourism, but domestic tourism, it can be a good solution. It's not the only one solution, and it can be a good solution not only now in the post-COVID period of time. In general, it can be a good solution. Of course, it's a big and complex topic that needs more time, so I don't want to add anything else right now. We don't have much time left, so.
I don't know if you want to add something. No? Okay, we didn't really have questions, only comments from Tatiana Yefremtseva saying that domestic tourism is indeed the first step to tourism recovery. And it is true for every country, not only for Russia. I think that we all agree on that. And like I said, we are opening a webinar on domestic tourism. We have a roundtable with speakers from Nicaragua, from Mexico, from France, from Italy. Our intern, Sabrina from Chile, she's going to present a special report that she has prepared on domestic tourism as well. So this starts at 4 Brussels time, so in about 40 minutes. You can still register. I don't think we have any more questions, so if the speakers don't want to add anything, I think that we can stop here. I wanted to thank you, Carlos, Kostas, Elena, for your insights. It's been very interesting and it's been a pleasure to exchange on this topic. Thanks to all the attendees. We've had a few people on Facebook as well. I could see they were watching the video from there. So, and I hope that we can keep working together in the near future. Thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you very much, too.
Thank you so much.
Thanks. Bye.